everybody, and welcome back to the Chilluminati podcast, episode 350.
Hey,
it's like some sort of landmark.
Were you holding on to that? Did you know that?
I didn't. I knew it a few days ago when I was like putting the script, started putting the script together. But before that, I didn't actually.
It's funny because now I never know when it's coming up because everybody's worried that I'm going to do like a minutes based. Now we're like too high up. We're too high up because that was what 100. That was like yeah. So that's like a long time
years ago.
Yeah, but actually it was mini-sode 100, so it was like 100-minute mini-sode. So that's why
it was like a game show with video. Yeah.
It was really, really genius and great. But
the 1000th episode marathon is going to be fantastic.
1,000 minutes. What would we do? It would be like we'd have to do a live like.
Oh, we'd have to go to a haunted house finally.
At 1,000, we gotta go before 1,000. Holy shit!
I've been waiting.
Okay, I promise that by episode 1,000, we will go to a haunted house.
All right, good. We're almost halfway to 1,000. Almost 350 is like kind of a landmark. It's a round number, but like
it feels good. I don't think there was ever a Pokemon that landed on 350. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, how iconic is it as a number? But
right.
You know what is Pokemon 350? By the way. That's something that I could have told you
several many years ago.
Reptilisquirrel.
Reptilisquirrel? That's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guy. I don't know what that is.
Now it's
Milotic.
That was pretty close.
Milotic?
Yeah.
Milotic.
Venus is that a bug that sings?
No, it's a beautiful lamia fish. So you were pretty close.
Okay.
Welcome to the show, Jesse and Alex, by the way.
Hello.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're no problem. Yeah,
I'm used to this. I've done this 349 other times.
Yeah, it goes right by you at this point. Before we jump into the final part of Salem, which I'm excited to get into, it's a big chunky one. Just go, hey, we have live show tickets still available right now. You can go get them at the link below. The show is August 22nd out in Chicago at the Lincoln Theater. We always sell out, so grab the tickets while you can before they're gone. I'm really excited.
And speaking of 20 seconds, and I don't mean 20 seconds, I mean 22, as in May 22, as in probably already has occurred, right? So we are doing a huge merch release and sale, and it's all happening for everyone on May 25th. Okay? That's when we're going to do our Manted shirt. Which you can go Manted and Chill, which you can go see now at patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod, or probably now, depending on when you're listening to this, it will also be live on the Yeti by then. It's going to be live. We're going to be blasting it everywhere. You can get the shirt. We're also doing a set of stickers, mystery stickers, where we're going to feature an artist who the jig will be up on the artist next week. So we're going to, the whole thing is,
the jig will be up on those artists, see?
The jig will be up on those artists.
You'll never take them alive, Kapam.
Well, yeah, it's all good. The point is, we're going to be doing this. It's the second installment. I'm looking at the stickers right now. They're all amazing, but you guys won't be able to see them until you buy them. But they're based on some of our favorite and the artist's favorite moments from our show. So starting next week, we're going to be promoting these super hard with the artist, with the stickers. But right now, you can go see them. If you're on Patreon, you can see the stickers. If not, you get a mystery question mark image on the Yeti site. So those are 50-50 that we're going to split the profits there with that artist, because that is going to be super awesome. And I'm going to give you one hint as to one of the stickers, and that is range for Harry. That's a little teaser.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Stickers.
Don't know what that is.
Little teaser for those stickers. And then, so in addition to the stickers and in addition to the shirt, which is the manted, like sexy mantis logo, which Mel took, our house artist, Studio Electro. She took it, her original art, and she expanded it into like a nice, cool t-shirt drawing. So now that is going to be also a classic shirt that's going to be on the shop for a while, but you can go get it and you can go get the stickers. And while we're still doing this promotion, all of the beautiful posters that we have on the site, which we have lots of stock of, they've been in the shop for a while. They're like the series of like comic book cover posters. Mathas, maybe you can remind me who the artist is on those.
It depends on the poster, actually. So,
okay. So a collection of really great comic art from people that are drawing on par with anything that you would go buy at a comic shop, to be honest with you. Jeff the Mongoose, some Nyarlathotep-esque character that I can't remember. Doctor, our hair hypnosis.
Hair hypnosis is one of them. Yeah.
There's a bunch of posters there. Go check them out. They're 70% off for the duration of this sale. That's a huge discount, and you can snap up as many as you want with or without the shirts or the stickers. But there's all kinds of new stuff. There's deals on old stuff. Getty.com/Chilluminati. Go
Hell
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Follow the link in the description. And like I say, 25th for everybody. But if you're a patron, even a free patron, head to patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod and you can get early access starting on the 22nd.
Yeah.
See, it all came full circle.
It all came. Look at
Page
that.
4 Harry.
That was
it's almost like I didn't just pull that out of my ass while I have some kind of crazy head cold, but I do.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. We're gonna cure your head cold with witchcraft today, boys. That's my segue into the episode. Because today is the third and final part of the Salem Witch Trials.
Is there some kind of pea-like cake that I could use for my sniffles?
Yes, it would be your own.
Some sort of loaf of bread with urine involved that could help me clear my...
You said a pea-like cake?
Yeah,
like a cake, but with pea qualities.
Yeah, it has to have the urine of a doctor.
Yeah. I, like the dog, would appreciate that cake and would be able to tell you more if there are witches present, I assume. And
two of the
clear
three
my
of us
runny
are
nose. Yeah.
Two of the three of us are sick this week, by the way, and I'm not the sick one. So
can I just get like an apple cider donut or like an old fashioned?
That's not
like,
going to cure you, dude.
Sorry.
That's not going to help.
No. Witch pea cake is the only thing.
It's cure my soul.
I'm so sorry. It's only piss cakes.
It's only piss cakes.
Have piss in my mouth.
Just a reminder for our primary source for this series has been Emerson W. Baker's A Storm of Witchcraft, The Salem Trials, and the American Experience. Phenomenal source. It has just been a wealth of knowledge. And between last episode and this episode, the sources have actually just simply grown. There's just so many documents out there. I'm not going to read them all, but there's just so many documents from that era that you can just literally go read that tell you so much about what's going on. So as we dive into part 3 of this series, let's just do a very, very quick recap as to where we left off in the last episode. When we last left off, 20 people were dead, 19 hanged on the gallows, and then one 81-year-old Giles Corey pressed to death over 2 days in a Salem pasture in mid-September. At least 5 more had died in jail before they could be tried. Sarah Osborne, the bedridden widow we met in part 1, was the first one to die back in May 10th. Sarah Good's newborn infant, the grandmother Lydia Dustin, who would die just weeks after being acquitted because her family couldn't pay her jail fees, and others. A bunch of people died, but 20 were executed kind of directly. And when we left off part 2 with a very particular sentence, the most famous sentence from a document Increase Mather had been writing all month. Cases of conscience concerning evil spirits personating men. I think he means impersonating, but personating.
What happened to a storm of witchcraft? What happened to that? That's way cleaner.
It's way clean. No, not anymore. We're
Could
back
just be
to
verbiage of the time too, or just personating was a thing.
Yeah,
that sounds like true. When they translate anime episodes directly into English.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The quote was, "It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than that one innocent person should be condemned." And what he's doing with this document, basically, it's easy for us 300 some odd years later to look back at this at the moment. We could say a reasonable man finally said what we all think is the obvious thing. 10 people should be fucking killed over one suspected witch.
This is fucked up, guys.
Hey, calm down, okay?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Everybody needs to relax.
The fuck, though? What?
You're all at an 11. I need you at a 4.
Yeah, hello?
But it wasn't really that cut and dry. It was way more, especially because of the time period, it was way more of a careful and politically risky maneuver than that. Increase Mather was at this point one of the most powerful religious figures in the entire English-speaking world. He just returned from London the previous year in May of 1691, having spent 4 years there as the colony's lead negotiator on the new royal charter. He'd come back with Governor Phipps, with a P. They were political allies. He was president of Harvard. He was the senior minister of Boston's North Church. He was the father of Cotton Mather, the man who'd ridden up on horseback at Burroughs' execution that we talked about last week to talk the crowd back into killing the person that they almost were like, wait, maybe this guy isn't a witch. The Mathers were basically like the religious dynasty of Massachusetts at the time.
Sounds, let me just say this, super chill.
Yeah, absolutely not at all stressful in any way.
This guy walk into my sandwich shop, I'd say, oh, hey there.
What's going on? Yeah. And you wouldn't be nervous at all.
Hey.
How's it going? Welcome. And in October of 1692, Increase Mather sat down to write a document that pulled the rug out from under his own son at the time. And he didn't do it by name, but the central argument of the cases of conscience, which I'm going to keep as the short name of the book. The argument that spectral evidence, mind you, was theologically and evidentially worthless, that Satan could absolutely impersonate innocent people, and that the touch test was nonsense, and that the standards of proof being used by the court of Oyer and Terminer, which never sounds natural coming out of my mouth, would have been laughed out of any reputable English court. The argument was a direct refutation of the framework that his son had spent the summer publicly defending.
Counterpoint, has he considered that I'm the only real person and that you're all my dream? It's like what he's basically saying.
It wasn't like a private quarrel either. 14 of the most senior ministers in Massachusetts signed off on the document, including Samuel Willard of Boston's Third Church, who'd been quietly preaching against the trial since June, including James Allen and John Bailey. The senior ministry of the colony had finally collectively decided to say in print what some of them had been already kind of saying in quiet to their pulpits and parlors and all those people for months. Phipps read the manuscript on October 9th, a Sunday. Ministers across the colony read excerpts from it from their pulpits. The next week, Increase Mather himself traveled to the Salem jail. He went to talk to the confessed witches, the Andover residents who'd been confessing all summer to save their own lives. And when remember, the only way that you could save your life during this was literally going against God, which is very like counterintuitive if you take a moment and step back and be like, the only way not to die is to turn yourself your back on God.
It's about admitting you have a problem, and that problem is Satan has control of your soul. But once you do that, then you open yourself up to Jesus and God to fight it back. And that's why it's fine to be like, oh, I was with the devil, but now I'm fine.
From the minds that brought you, if she drowns, she isn't a witch.
Thank you so much to Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's episode. And quick thought experiment, I just want you to do me a favor. Pull up your last wireless bill and actually look at the thing. Line by line, just take a look. See regulatory fee or administrative charge, the mystery $4 that's just there, unexplained, kind of like a cryptid of some sort. Yeah, you're paying for all that. You've been paying for all that for years, and nobody at the big carrier is going to call you up and say, so, hey, listen, we notice you're being gently robbed every month. Do you want us to stop? Are you one of the people that actually likes your money? Because they like your money too. Maybe sometimes as much as you do or more, and that's really, really dangerous. All right, so here's what Mint is actually going to be doing for you. They're calling that bluff. The bluff being that wireless has to cost what it costs, because it doesn't. Mint's whole reason for existing is to stop you from overpaying just because that's how it's always been. Premium plans start at $15 a month. High-speed data, unlimited talk and text, that big 5G network thing. You bring your own phone, port your number, activate with an eSIM in a few minutes from your couch. No contract locking you in, no hassle, no store visit where someone tries to upsell you a tablet you don't need. And that has happened to me more than once, I'm ashamed to say. So if you like your money, and again, I cannot stress enough that liking your money is a reasonable position to be holding, Mint Mobile is for you. Get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/chill. That's mintmobile.com/chill. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Just admit that the guys trying you are correct. You are an evil woman. That's all you have to do is just say, I'm an evil woman and these men are correct. That's it. What's so hard about that?
Yeah, what's so hard about that? That's smart. These men are correct.
Yeah.
And well, when Increase Mather went to the colony jail, showed up and was like, in essence, looked at them and was like, hey, we know you're not witches. Like, we kind of know. A lot of them almost immediately retracted the fact that they were witches. Like, it was near instant because
they saw literally one other person that wasn't part of their like nightmare.
Yeah, well, yeah, Increase Mather, one of the most influential religious people in the world, just showed up and was like, hey, we kind of know you're not witches and whatnot. And so, like, most of them, a big chunk of them were like, then we retract our statement. Then, we're not witches. They had only said it to save themselves. They retracted their confessions, accusations they had made against their neighbors. They also retracted those. Basically, the whole pyramid of testimony for the court that had been built started to come apart in the cells right then and there. And Mather had been accompanied to the jail by a Boston merchant named Thomas Brattle. And Thomas Brattle is the second character I'm going to introduce you to here, because what he was doing in October of 1692, in some ways, is even more devastating than what Increase Mather was doing for these people. Thomas Brattle was a Boston merchant in his mid-30s, super rich. He was the treasurer of Harvard College, and he'd inherited a substantial mercantile fortune. But he was also something more rare around that time in 1692 Massachusetts. He was the best you could be, a scientist at this time. And I say the best you could be because it's, there's still a lot of learning that has to be done before we're like, a scientist of our understanding kind of comes into existence.
Does this just mean like a wizard? Like, what are we talking about?
No, he was educated at Harvard. He traveled to England in the 1680s and worked with Robert Boyle.
Know about like humors and shit? Like, what are we talking about?
I mean, I don't know if their humors are still mixed in there or not. I'll be honest with you. But what I did learn is that he worked with a guy called Robert Boyle, and Robert Boyle, which I didn't know, was the father of modern chemistry.
He's the first guy who boiled shit ever.
Yep.
That's why they named it that. Yeah.
He was the man whose name is on Boyle's Law that you probably learned. Like, people apparently learned about this in high school, but I didn't take chemistry in high school. Like, I never even had chemistry class. So you tell me if that's common. Boyle's Law.
Celsius. Water boils.
Boyle, all right? Not BOIL, unfortunately.
No, that's the English version. Here in the States,
that's BOIL. Yeah, you're right.
No, that's Raymond's dad.
Okay. Point being, this guy that we're meeting here has had like actual scientific education for this time. Brattle returned to Massachusetts with like a scientific mind and an understanding of like some sort of scientific method and some sort of chemistry, right? Like, he has an understanding here.
The best you could hope for in fucking the Vavitch
that's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I keep spinning my tires on here. And in the summer and fall of 1692, what Thomas Brattle was observing in the court was something that he was like, this is all bullshit. On October 8th, 1692, a single day before the ministers started reading cases of conscience from their pulpits, Brattle finished writing a long letter. It was addressed to an unnamed Reverend Sir, quote unquote. We don't know for certain who the recipient was. It was possibly Increase Mather, possibly someone else in the similar senior position, but everyone involved understood that the letter was meant to circulate. It was, in modern letters, it was an open letter as we understand them, a piece of something that he wanted the public to see. Brattle's letter is 338 years later still the single most devastating piece of writing produced during or about the Salem trials, in my opinion. He goes through the court's procedures one by one, and he destroys them one by one.
In iambic pentameter. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of close. The use of spectral evidence, Brattle pointed out that the same evidence had been rejected by every reputable English court for over a century by this time. The touch test, I know it's crazy to like learn that. Even by 1692, spectral evidence was 100 years out of date in the English court.
Like,
and it's,
I get being like superstitious, right? I understand even today, like some people who are Christians are like, especially, and you don't have to be a Christian to feel this way, but like your religion gives you a sort of extra fear of something like, oh, there's a demon in this relic from eBay. It gets you, there's a little bit, but we're not in a world where the judge will go, oh, it was a demon.
Right.
Anything that you say, right, even right now is a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, it's insane that they were even doing it at this point. The touch test, Brattle also noted that the afflicted girls had no business diagnosing witchcraft because their own conditions were so obviously suspect. The confessions, Brattle continued to point out that the confessors regularly contradicted themselves, that many of them were described by their own neighbors as, quote, crazed, distempered women, that they were obviously confessing because the alternative was fucking death. Like, if they don't confess, they die. And then Brattle did something in his letter that people kind of pointed out as even more dangerous than anything else written at that point. He started naming the names of people who agreed with him. He's like that internet poster to me who's like yanks in his private conversations with people to like prove their point. He named Increase Mather, Samuel Willard, Major Saltonstall, the guy who had resigned that we talked about last episode.
Is this before like witness testimonies were a thing? You just said them.
No,
you just said the name and then they'd go, ah, yes, wow, okay.
I mean, like witness testimonies are a thing, but this guy's just doing an open letter and pointing people out, and he had like sway. Simon Bradstreet was also named, who was a former governor, Thomas Danforth, the former deputy governor, and several sitting Boston magistrates who Brattle said were prepared to resign their commissions rather than continue participating in the trials. And he listed them by name. He was telling the colony in the writing
book.
Yeah, he was like just being like, the entire senior political and religious establishment of Massachusetts thinks this court is illegitimate. You are alone, gentlemen, increasingly alone. Like, that was his message to these people. Brattle's letter and Mather's cases of conscience together broke the political support for the court of Oyer Terminer kind of definitively. Phipps read both. Phipps heard what was happening in the Salem jail when Increase Mather walked in. He also got some news that hit him personally. Sometime in mid-October, an afflicted girl in Boston cried out the name of Phipps's own wife, Lady Mary Phipps, who had, while her husband was off in Maine fighting the war, used her authority as the governor's wife to order the release of an accused woman from the Boston jail, essentially doing something good, and it got her accused as a witch.
That brings up a valid question. All right. Mathas, Alex and I pull you in front of the judges. We are your prosecutors. We are saying to you, you witch, name other witches.
You fucking witch.
Wouldn't you think,
witch?
As a defense, you would say, Alex's wife taught me the witchcraft. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you immediately be like, why, governor, 'twas your wife who taught me the witch. Like, I'd take him down with me.
I feel like that's like right now, that would work in like 2 seconds. I feel like back then they would just like be like, and then just like kill him.
Sure, but if that's the case, then at least I want to plant. If they're gonna kill me anyway, I'm planting the seed that lady's a witch. You know what I mean?
And that did, remember, part of this was like, that did eventually start happening, which is when it started becoming a problem. It's like, oh, right, they started getting accused. But also keep in mind, this all started in a higher up's house and started accusing downward. So I think it took time for it to swing back the other way.
Oh, I would have been like, did this not
major play?
Did this not begin in the whole? Like, I would take them all down. I'd be like, why, yes, but I'm just a poor slave. I learned it from you, mistress. Like, I would take them
That's
down.
Not what you told me.
Burn the ground that they all walked on. I'd be like, screw it.
Well,
I think it might have been like too scary. Like, I think it might have been like, I think that's like a big swing. That's like saying "fuck you" to the king or something, almost like, right? Because these people are like children, right? And like,
I mean, there is sort of like in a puritanical society, there's definitely like a father knows best vibes. And if you don't fall, like, you do not go against dad, right? And so any men had a lot of control, and I would imagine that would be scary. With that said, again, I would have gone like, I would have Tituba, but a little more targeted Tituba. I would start naming names. It would be like Tituba, all the higher ups in town.
You go straight up targeted Tituba.
Yeah, I go full TT on those sons of bitches. I would destroy that town. I'd be like
them titties out.
I'd be like the mayor, in on it. I'd be like the governor, yup. I'd be like, those little girls, they're the ones who taught me. They're just selling me out. Oh, I would go.
I danced naked with the governor's wife through the trees on candle tips.
Yep.
And as always, though, like, right, like, it's all that always works. And eventually, that's what always ends up tipping the shit. It always works is when the higher ups start getting accused of it. And now they're like, oh, wait, we need to fix this. Because for William Phipps, that was, I think, one of the biggest moments for him that really did push him in this direction, which is that his own wife became a target. The senior ministry of the colony had publicly turned at this point as well. The political class was bailing at this point. The war on the frontier was eating his attention because that's still going on and being lost horribly. And every eventual execution was making the situation so much worse every single time. It never got better after an execution. Shit just not got better. On October 12th, 1692, William Phipps sat down and wrote a letter to William Blathwayt. And this is where I point out there's a lot of the shit that gets done in this time is by letter. There's so many letters written everywhere. So you're going to hear by letter a few more times in this episode. Just be ready. Written by letter to William Blathwayt, the secretary of the Privy Council in London, that it was the first time he had ever, I know, dude, there's so many governmental like shit. Privy Council in London, 1692. It was the first time he had ever formally told the English government what had been happening in his colony. He told them he was forbidding any further charges of witchcraft except in extreme cases. And he told them, and this is verbatim, that he had concluded, quote, the devil had taken upon him the name and shape of several persons who were doubtlessly innocent and to my certain knowledge of good reputation. They're still saying the devil showed up. They're still like saying the devil showed up, but these people saw assaulting them was actually the devil in disguise. It wasn't actually them, and they're all innocent. And this is like, I guess, best case scenario at this time for the religious governance.
Diplomatic. Yeah, it actually feels kind of,
diplomatic is a great way to put it. Exactly.
Feels like a way towards a win-win, sort of, based on what's already gone down.
Yeah, trying to minimize probably further damage on both sides. He also banned any further publications about the trials. He didn't want what he called, quote, inextinguishable flames. He just didn't want the negative press to catch fire, I think.
That sounds a little fascist, but like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Well,
on this scale, like, yeah.
Remember, they're coming from a fucking monarchy. Like, it is fascistic in a lot of ways.
You're right.
Cotton Mather's book, The Wonders of the Invisible World, which was the defense of the trials by Cotton, which he'd been writing all summer, that we talked about last episode a bit, was rushed into print under Phipps' authority right before the ban took effect. Phipps wrote a personal foreword for it, and it was, in Phipps' mind, the official government version of the story. He sent a copy to London on the same ship that carried his letter, and by the time anyone in Massachusetts could legally publish a response to Cotton's defense of the trials would be over and the colony's official narrative would already be set. Basically, because things took so fucking long to travel back and forth and for like things to be signed and for word to get back into the colony, you're looking 9 months to a year probably in between hearing back from when you send your letter off to getting a response. That didn't matter that the version that took hold was Cotton Mather's defense of it all. And that like time, culture moved on. They just moved on with their lives.
Honestly, probably for the best to have like non-instant communication in some cases.
I mean, yeah, look at what it's got us now, you know?
I mean, there's a lot of things that we could say about this that are reflective of what's going on now. But that's another That's probably for the end of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. That was Phipps' politics. Get the story out, ban the debate, end the killings, and hope that London never asked too many fucking hard questions that would make him look worse than this already had become. In October 29th, 1692, when the Massachusetts General Court asked Phipps whether the court of Oyer and Terminer would stand or fall, Phipps said three words. It must fall.
More Blathwaite.
More Blathwaite. I love that name. It's so of its time. There's got to be Blathwaites around still, you think?
If you're a Blathwaite, you are awesome by association. That's an incredible last name.
I would love if there's a Blathwaite that listens to the show. I feel like we win the lottery. That's
Blathwaite
awesome.
is like, I don't know how to I don't want to explain this further, but that is such a fucking last name ass name.
Yeah, you can't mistake that for a first name or a middle name, literally.
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. There's some guy named Blathwaite Shaw who rocks. He's like a wizard.
Blathwaite Shaw.
All right.
I was going to say, he's got a character sheet for sure.
Yeah, Blathwaite Shaw is a good name.
Damn,
Blathwaite Shaw is a fictional character. He
Hobbs and Blathwaite Shaw.
Yep.
If that is what his first name is, I will lose my shit.
That was Owen and the other guy Shaw's dad, Blathwaite Shaw.
Blathwaite.
Because the mom's name is Queenie, by the way. So Queenie and Blathwaite Shaw is a good couple.
Now we're back in like 1910 England again. I don't know,
yeah. Damn, proved us wrong. All right. Well, now that the court was dead, you'd think the accused would be freed right away, but they were not.
Why?
There were still more than 150 people in jail across the colony in November of 1692. Some had been there for 9 months. Their conditions were not getting better. And as winter was starting to set in, if you remember in episode 1, we're talking like some of the worst winters, the mini ice age of the time.
People were innocent and known to be innocent and just dying in the winter in prison.
Still in prison as winter is coming, because this obviously there were heated cells back then, and the prisoners had been wearing the same clothes since the previous spring.
Yikes.
It's like
what?
Medieval like jail like systems. People were literally still dying in jail. Lydia Dustin, the Reading grandmother that we mentioned earlier, they would die in the Cambridge cell that March, from November to March, and they were known to be innocent weeks.
Why weren't they let go?
Weeks after being formally acquitted, because the families couldn't pay the jail keepers' fees.
Okay.
That checks out. Innocent, but now you got to pay. Like, yeah, you're innocent. You were all acquitted. Sorry, our bad. Once you pay your fees, you can go.
That'll be $1 million.
The old debtor's prison vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't even do a crime.
No, I know. But after people started to die, Phipps started to let people out of jail on bail instead.
He had the option to do that from the beginning.
Well, yeah, because he didn't have the legal authority to actually just release them. But he had the political authority not to enforce the existing warrants, and he stretched that literally as far as he could.
God bless him.
He tried, I guess, on his own way. He still let people die first, and they sat in prison for weeks after they were acquitted, but then he started to try. And then on November 25th, 1692, the Massachusetts legislature created a new court system, finally. The top court in the colony would now be called the Superior Court of Judicature, and it would handle all capital cases, including any remaining witchcraft cases.
New court system, eh?
Yeah. On December 7th, the governor's council appointed the judges. Stoughton would continue as chief justice. Samuel Sewell, Waite Winthrop, and John Richards, all veterans of the disbanded previous court, would also serve. So would Thomas Danforth, the former deputy governor, who had been one of the most vocal critics of the trials. On December 12th, the legislature passed a new witchcraft statute that basically just adopted the current English law on the subject of witchcraft. And they scheduled a special session of the Superior Court to begin on January 3rd, 1693 in Salem, to deal with the remaining witch cases, because you got it. These people are still in jail, and some of them are still waiting fucking trials on the witchcraft cases that they were accused of. Like, a lot of people were acquitted, but a lot of people still had to go through the whole court system still before they could get acquitted of this shit, which makes no sense, but it's how they were doing things. Phipps did one more thing before the new court convened. He talked privately to the judges off the record. So we actually don't have a transcript, but what we have is a letter Phipps wrote to London a few months later in February of 1693, where he described the conversation that he had. He said verbatim, quote, "Some of them were convinced and acknowledged that their former proceedings were too violent and not grounded upon a right foundation, but that if they might sit again, they would proceed after another method." Basically saying, if you seat us again, we will do the witchcraft thing differently this time. We definitely didn't do it right the first time. We were too violent. Make us judges and we'll do it differently.
Just so you know, there is a real witch. There are still real witches out there.
Like,
that
we screwed up a little,
caught.
but yeah, but like we'll get them this time.
The witches are still out there.
It's basically, he told the judges off the record that spectral evidence was no longer admissible, and most of them agreed, essentially, is what people believe, is what it boils down to. When the Superior Court convened in Salem on January 3rd, with 50 or so remaining witch cases on the docket, the jurors asked the judges what weight they should give to spectral evidence. An unnamed judge replied, and this is another kind of somewhat famous line among historians, I guess, is Increase Mathers, quote, 10 suspected witches line, that spectral evidence should be given, quote, as much weight as of chips in wort.
Does that mean like in water?
In W-O-R-T. As much weight as chips in wort. Chips in wort. Wort is the liquid. I got you. Don't worry. Wort is a liquid you make when you boil malted grain for beer. Chips of grain that get into wort during the boiling are nothing.
So you toss them away. They're trash.
They don't count. Yeah. The judge was saying spectral evidence is floating shit. Disregard it. I just didn't know if you boys would have known what that meant.
I thought you meant a Glorsha warder. That's what I thought.
A Glorsha warder. So the court tried 22 defendants over the next 2 weeks. They acquitted 19 of them. The 3 who were convicted had all confessed. Their names were, because we're going to get back to them, Sarah Wardwell, the wife of Samuel Wardwell, who'd been hanged on September 22nd.
Rough name for a suspected witch, just got to say.
Mary Post, and a young woman named Elizabeth Johnson Jr. We're going to come back to her as well. Stoughton signed warrants for the execution of all 3 convicted women. He also signed warrants for 5 others who'd received stays of execution under the old Court of Oyer and Terminer, including Elizabeth Proctor and Abigail Faulkner, both of whom had been spared because they were pregnant. The Attorney General reviewed the warrants and pointed out something obvious to Phipps. Basically, there were other women who had confessed and been acquitted by the new court. If you execute Sarah Wardwell and Mary Post and Elizabeth Johnson Jr. for the same crime that you just acquitted other people of, you kind of had a problem on your hand. And so Phipps instead reprieved all 8. And this is where we get into William Stoughton's, one of the judges, fury about this. The Superior Court was set to meet again on February 1st, 1693 in Charleston to take up more witchcraft cases. When Stoughton arrived and was informed that Phipps had reprieved the 8 condemned women, the women that he had personally signed the death warrants for, Stoughton walked out of the courthouse. He left mid-session. He turned the proceedings over to Judge Danforth, the man who'd opposed the trials from the start, mind you. And as he walked out, he was overheard fuming in a line that Robert Califf of one of the books would later preserve. Quote, "We were in a way to have cleared the land of these. The kingdom of Satan is advanced, and the Lord have mercy on this country."
So he just full on thought he was like fighting evil.
What year was this? 2025?
2026, actually.
Things don't change, let me tell you.
Yeah, he just
they do not.
I know. We'll just take a minute, take a breath. Thank you so much to Hero Forge for sponsoring today's episode. And you heard me say it before, I'm going to say it forever. I'm such a nerd. I play tabletop RPGs multiple times a week. I have a figurine collection that I am both proud and embarrassed of. And a lot of that is thanks to Hero Forge. If you head over to heroforge.com right now, you can go check it out. If you're like a minis collector, if you like to make your own minis, that's what Hero Forge is all about. You can customize hundreds and thousands of different minis with the different unique combinations they have, and then have them mailed directly to your home, from plastics to bronze and so many more options. It's easily the best place to go. And if you're not even sure, like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to buy anything, I'm not sure of like if I can make what I want, go over to heroforge.com right now, and literally you can use their like mini maker tool for free. You can try and make your own mini the way you would want it, or if you're a DM like me, make like a standard goblin, for instance, and just make an army of those, and check it out. The tool is entirely free. And if you're like, you know what, this is worth it, go ahead and grab that mini. And if you have a 3D printer at home, you can save yourself a bunch of money and then just buy the digital file for that particular mini cheaper off their website that way, and you can print it at home, or have them use their amazing printers and plastics and then have them send it to you. I will preach for Hero Forge forever. I've told my friends and family who all game like me to go to Hero Forge well before we started working with them, and I'm just happy we get to keep working with them for another year. Head over there, and if you do buy something, use code CHILLPOD on checkout to save yourself a little bit of money on the way out, and supports the show. That's CHILLPOD code on the checkout of Hero Forge. Thank you again to Hero Forge for sponsoring this part of today's episode. Yeah, he was like, we almost got them all, baby. We almost got all the witches, but nope, we're going to let the witches live. Stoughton, again, was the Chief Justice of Massachusetts at this time, and he was the one who also personally overruled Rebecca Nurse's not guilty verdict. He overruled that and said, you're guilty anyway. And he was also like 20 people died on this guy's watch, essentially. He would return to the bench in late April and May of 1693 to preside over the last session of witch trials, and the result was the same. Every single accused person was acquitted, though several of them, including a woman by the name of Lydia Dustin, would die in jail before their families could raise the money to pay for the prison fees, as we said a little earlier. The last person tried by the Superior Court was Tituba, which is kind of like a poetic circle. One of the first people is also the last person. And on May 9th, 1693, a grand jury in Ipswich refused to indict her 14 months after she'd been arrested. So she'd been arrested. She'd been in jail for fucking over a year. 14 months in jail sat. Tituba was acquitted, but she was not free. She still owed her jail fees, which is about £7, which is around which is at the time, it was equal to probably half of her value as an enslaved person in 1693.
What would that be in dollars?
£7 to USD. Oh man, I didn't look it up. £7 to £7, 1693 to present day USD.
It's equivalent to roughly 1,000 or to $1,500, somewhere in between there.
So she would have been valid. So yeah, so like if you look at $1,500, then she was for a year in jail.
$1,000.
And that's, you know, her value as an enslaved person was around 3,000 at the time. Then that would mean,
God damn.
Yeah, it's fucking
in today's
sucks.
US dollars, $3,000.
$3,000 in today US dollars
for a person.
Yeah, that fucking is pure evil. Pure evil. It's like hard. It's hard. It's like impossible for well, I live in Texas, so maybe not for everybody, but like to wrap your brains around, like it's insane. Exactly. It's a PC. It's nuts. So she's not free. You know, she's got £7 of jail fees. Samuel Paris, who was her owner, refused to pay them, which is insane because again, it all started in his fucking house. Baker thinks Baker, the author of the book that I used, thinks Paris didn't want her in his house anymore, where she would have served as a constant reminder of what happened. So Tituba was sold to another master to recover the fees. And then she disappears from the historical record, like completely. We do not know what happened to her. We don't know who bought her, where she went, if her name ended up changing after that, whether she lived another year, another 40 years. We don't know. The woman whose confession kind of started everything just vanishes in history, which is really fucking frustrating. Because I would have loved to know what happened to her, that poor woman. William Stoughton, by the way, never forgave Samuel Sewell for what Sewell did 4 years later, which we're about to get to. Stoughton would, as acting governor of the colony after Phipps's death, snub Sewell by inviting every other member of the governor's council to a dinner party at his house. Stoughton would eventually die in 1701, having continued to believe to his dying day that the witchcraft court had been right, that it had been on the verge of saving the colony from Satan, that its only failure was that it had been stopped too soon, and he never apologized for any of it. Dickhead. It took Samuel Sewall 4.5 years to publicly say what he had done, but he was honestly, in the end, one of the only judges who would admit to it. Sewall in 1697 was 44 at this point, and he was one of the wealthiest men in the colony by virtue of his marriage to Hannah Hull, the only child of John Hull, who had built one of the greatest mercantile fortunes in colonial New England. Sewall had inherited an empire, sawmills, like a sawmill empire, a farm out in Rhode Island, and the properties throughout the Boston area just like fell into this dude's lap. And he was a judge, a member of the Governor's Council, and he was a respected Puritan saint of the South Church in Boston. And he had spent the 4 years since the trials watching his own household get destroyed. The Sewalls had buried 2 infant children in the years after 1692. Sewall's 2-year-old son, Joseph, had been struck by an illness so severe in the spring of 1696 that the family believed he was going to die. He survived, but the experience devastated the man. He had also been watching throughout this period the Quaker writer Thomas Maull's pamphlet against the Salem Witch Trials being prosecuted in Salem itself, in a trial that ended in November 1696 with Maull's acquittal, the jury finding that he had every right to publish what he had published, because remember, there was a censorship law that was put into place about writing this stuff. Sewall, in his private diary in this period, started writing about his certainty that God was punishing him, that the deaths of his children were a judgment, that something had to be done. And so on December 17th, 1696, the Massachusetts General Court issued a proclamation for a colony-wide day of fasting and humiliation to be observed on January 14th, 1697. The proclamation was carefully worded. It asked the colony to humble itself before God and repent for its various sins, and almost as a side clause, easy to miss, to pray that God would not bring judgment upon them for, quote, the late tragedy raised among us by Satan and his instruments. And that particular line, the late tragedy raised among us by Satan and his instruments, the official government approved framing of what the trials had been, not the colony's fault, but Satan's, and that they all had just gotten tricked into hanging 20 of their neighbors. And that was what the colony was asking its people to repent for on January 14th, 1697. He's still, in a weird way, trying to be political in his prayer to God, his inability to say it was their own fault, that God is not punishing them, no, but God is punishing them for allowing themselves to be tricked by Satan. So, like, still not quite able to take ownership and just praying to God, I guess, that way.
As much as we live in a, like, secretly Christian dominated government, like,
you see it as a secret, eh?
Well, look, it's just not reported on that. I mean, people don't talk about it as such that much these days. But, you know, like, I don't feel like even in this climate now is the literal existence of the Christian God like so needed from almost anyone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe that, but it's hard to imagine that, like, there was like a specter of like a real, like, I know that, like, you know, if you're Christian, you kind of do believe this. But I would venture to guess that the feeling of the belief in the 1600s was very visceral and literal. Like, it complicates whole elements of it for me. Like, that guy who's just pissed because he didn't get to save the world from evil.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. That guy, I am like pre-coded to understand that guy as like a fucking guy from like some part of the country that disagrees with me, who is insincere and probably touches children. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think of a guy who talks like that, right? But like, maybe in this time, this guy's pissed because he thinks evil is winning, like, for real, in a sincere way, and that he, with his like mighty sword, can like put it back. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's really weird to think about a world where Christianity exists and God's presence feels like that.
Literal, like among you, like Satan is walking like physically around. It's scary. And like, it's interesting to see the people at the higher echelon of things still kind of very clearly, whether they consciously are or not, using their religion to implement their desires, and how that spirals out of control when that falls to the people who maybe believe a little bit more literally the things that it's so much has changed and so much has not changed at the same time, is like what I keep walking away from this all with. So that morning when the colony was to repent, Samuel Sewall walked into the South Church in Boston, sat in his pew, and he had a letter folded in his pocket. He handed the letter to the Reverend Samuel Willard, who you'll remember had been one of the most consistent critics of the trials from last episode, and who had written the preface to Increase Mather's book. Willard had been Sewall's pastor for years, and he was the one minister in Boston Sewall trusted to read his letter in public. The service began. Willard read the prayers. The congregation participated in the fasting, and then at the appropriate moment, Willard stood and read Sewall's letter aloud. Sewall stood up while Willard read it. He stood in his pew, facing the congregation, the entire Sabbath gathering on the South Church staring back at him while the words were read by the Reverend. He just kind of stood there in silence. The letter is pretty short, and it's one of the more interesting documents that I'm going to have you guys read. Alex, you can read this. Like I said, it's a pretty short letter, and this is what the pastor is reading aloud.
Samuel Sewall, sensible of the reiterated strokes of God upon himself and his family, and being sensible that as to the guilt contracted upon the opening of the late commission of Oyer and Terminer at Salem, to which the order for this day relates, he is, upon many accounts, more concerned than any that he knows of, desires to take the blame and shame of it, asking pardon of men, and especially desiring prayers that God, who has an unlimited authority, would pardon that sin and all other his sins.
Yeah, he is, in essence, taking the blame, trying to take the shame. The quote, he, upon many accounts, is more concerned than any that he knows of. Like, he's basically saying, like, he's the judge of the court of Oyer and Terminer, who is standing up in front of his church, in front of the colony, in front of God, and saying, this was me. I did this. I was wrong. I'm asking for forgiveness. Kind of playing the Jesus role in a weird little way, of his own way of taking the sin upon himself from men and from God.
If that's what it takes to get somebody to be honest, great.
And yeah, but this is also the only public apology from any of the judges ever. And remember, there were 9 judges. 8 of them never publicly apologized. Stoughton went, again, the guy who was, you were just saying, fighting evil, went to his grave defending the fact that he was fighting evil.
Probably because he thought that shit was out there. He probably thought Satan was licking at his heels.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, and I believe that he truly did believe that Satan was real. Hawthorne and Corwin, who were the original examining magistrates from part 1, never just publicly said anything. They just went fucking quiet and were like, nope, we're never going to talk about it again. Wait Winthrop, John Richards, Bartholomew Gedney, Peter Sargent, Nathaniel Saltonstall, who'd resigned in June, none of them ever stood up. Sewall was the only one. Stoughton never spoke to him about it directly, but Stoughton, who was acting governor, had to maintain at least formal civility with Sewall on the governor's council, and he found a way to communicate his contempt for this. That was the dinner party snub that we talked about previously. Sewall also did something else that morning, or shortly after, we're not sure, that almost nobody knew about during his lifetime, but that his family eventually disclosed. He started wearing a hair shirt, which a hair shirt is a coarse, uncomfortable undergarment worn directly against the skin as a form of constant penance. I'd never heard about this before I wrote this.
Yeah.
Did you knew about this?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Penance is an interesting thing. I don't know. Again, going back to real God, tangible, present God and Satan, right? In this plane, a guy who you got to think about, and it's consistent between all men.
Ugh.
Everybody today has a lot more of a personal relationship with God. Maybe Samuel Sewall being I will take the blame of this. I will put it on myself. I will be the blame. And then he's repenting, right? Maybe the other judges were like, He handled it. Great.
Yeah, he took all the blame. It is, I guess, by tradition, it is meant to be itchy and irritating. And he was apparently wore it to the day he died for the rest of his life.
Wore one from Da Vinci Code too.
It's a different version, but yeah, I'm looking it up right now. That's the chainmail one where you wear it around your leg and just having it on, it digs into your body. Yeah, there's other versions that are made of sacks.
God.
Ivan the Terrible had a hair shirt.
It feels exquisitely Catholic to me.
Yeah,
it really
was St. Louis.
Does
the actual man St. Louis wore a hair shirt, but it was a not actually, like, many of them aren't made of hair. They're just made of like the coarsest cloth you can find.
Just a shitty thing, yeah.
So it just hurts.
Fun fact, he wore it till he died, which was he lived until 1730. So he wore the shirt for 33 years.
That's fucking crazy.
Oh, God.
Do you think after a while you get used to it?
Your brain has to. Like, your brain has to adapt to it.
But that's still fucking nuts. Like, he probably did feel bad and then just literally probably woke up and thought about it every day.
Yeah.
So at least somebody did. God, at least somebody felt guilty about it out of the 9 judges.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what those other guys were thinking. I hope they at least couldn't sleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I hope they had a bad morning every morning after a bad night's sleep. But a few days after Sewell's apology, 12 men came together who had all been jurors on the court, and they published their own statement of regret, which appears in Robert Califf's book, which I have the quote here for Jesse to read.
Who is this again?
This is a published statement by the jurors of the court who also felt regret.
We confess that we ourselves were not capable to understand nor able to withstand the mysterious delusions of the powers of darkness and prince of the air. We do hereby declare that we justly fear that we were sadly deluded and mistaken, for which we are much disquieted and distressed in our minds, and do therefore humbly beg forgiveness.
This is the hardest video thine has ever had to make.
Yeah, it fades in really slow, and it's like they're already crying. It's the political. We got tricked. It still wasn't our fault. Satan tricked us, but we admit we were tricked, and we were.
If thou dost remember, 'twas the powers of Satan and not our own minds which led us to
happens
this
to the best of
deed.
us.
Yep.
And we should be forgiven. However, we will think about this for a while longer, at least a day or two more.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like we have a total of 13 people who like openly apologized the best you could in 1690s, like with the belief in God, right? Out of how many people who sat on the bench, out of how many magistrates and judges and however many people signed documents to make this all happen, 13 people in total ever are the only ones to ever apologize for
and
it.
12 of them much more just sort of like took a big lateral step away from the problem compared to the guy who wore a fucking torture device the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like that second quote is like, we are not in trouble for this anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah, like leave us alone.
Yeah.
Goodbye. God's got us. Now, though, we're going to go back to Salem Village because while Sewell was in Boston standing up and doing all this stuff, who kind of made himself the center of it all.
You tell me that he sees a real witch and then this becomes a real mystery at the end, I'm going to lose my mind.
I wish that's how this was going.
He was never seen from again.
An apple came from his throat and then a live sparrow flew out.
Back at home, back in Salem while he's away, Reverend Samuel Paris, his whole house, his whole like image in the colony is starting to slowly collapse in on itself. And it started almost immediately after the trials were officially done. If you remember in part 1, that Salem Village, remember, was divided into 2 factions before any of this started. The Putnams on one side, who were Paris's allies, the family of the lead afflicted accuser and Putnam Jr., and then the Porters and the Porters and the nurses on the other side. And the families of many of the accused families that had stood with Rebecca Nurse, the families that had been opposing Paris's installation as minister in 1689, the half that wasn't paying Paris's money. That fight didn't just end when the trials ended. It just got worse. In April of 1693, within months of the last trial, a group of Salem Village dissenters led by some of the Nurse family and the Porter faction formally stopped attending Reverend Paris's services. They started walking every Sabbath to neighboring villages to hear other ministers preach instead. This was their public act of religious defiance. It was their, I don't know, you guess like withdrawal, like passive withdrawal of their consent for them to preach in their village. Paris is because they were not paying him.
It feels so passive aggressive.
I realize super passive aggressive.
I mean, it's not. I realize that like there's like not that many people and everybody knows everybody, and like going to church is like the only time you fucking see anybody. So for them to be missing, it's definitely like much more buzzworthy than it seems like it would be if you just walked to another church. But it's still very like. They didn't like hit him. They just then we will get our godliness elsewhere.
Exactly. And keep in mind, his congregation, all which had never even been large, like the village was not all that large. And now it was visibly shrinking week after week. And then the dissenters started writing petitions. They documented Paris's role in the trials. They listed specific actions that he had taken. Specifically, remember, the sermons that had whipped up the panic in February of 1692, the shit where he was like declaring war on Satan himself, and his presence at the examinations of accused witches in his own meeting house, his refusal to defend members of his own congregation when they were accused, his refusal to pay Tituba's jail fees, which, you know, shout outs to them for like bringing that up as part of the complaints.
That's like actually way more than I ever would have expected from anyone.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, you know, I appreciate old
in today's lens, of course. In today's lens, of course. But it was bleak back then, guys. It was bleak.
Exactly. They also argued that he was unfit to continue as their minister, and they argued he should be removed. Paris, by 1694, was a man under siege in his own village. And at this point, his wife Elizabeth was sick. She would die in July of 1696. His niece, Abigail Williams, who was one of the original afflicted accusers, the 11-year-old girl from part one, remember, who was adopted because of orphanage stuff. We don't know what happens to her because she, too, vanishes from the historical record around this time. Baker thinks she may have died, but we don't know.
She didn't have a MySpace or anything?
No, she didn't have a MySpace. It's they're a few years out from that still,
unfortunately. Even Tom wouldn't friend her.
Tom just in like a fucking like one of those like puritanical buckle hats.
Yeah. The Putnam faction was still defending Paris, though. But the Putnam faction was shrinking, too, because by the end of 1692, several of the Putnam's family's own extended relatives in Andover and elsewhere had been accused of witchcraft. The very machinery that the Putnams had helped set into motion was eating at their own alliance. So their numbers, remember, one of the big reasons they were so powerful is their numbers were bigger than the Porters. But their own numbers were starting to get put into jail because of the witchcraft accusations. And by 1694, even some of the Putnams were quietly beginning to wonder if maybe their support for Paris had been a mistake. Maybe we should have not sided with Paris and we should have been on the Porters' side.
This feels like privilege.
A little bit. It's always until it starts getting you that they start giving a shit, you know? In 1695, a special church council was convened to try to mediate this dispute, and the council included Increase Mather himself. They tried to broker peace, and they couldn't. The dissenters wouldn't accept Paris staying. They did not. There was no condition in which they were okay with Paris staying. The Putnams had no condition where they would accept him going. On the other hand, he gets no matter what, he stays.
They loved him so much. They needed him around. They loved his cooking.
Well, after that, because nobody moved, the council eventually issued a report suggesting that maybe, just maybe, Paris might diplomatically potentially consider leaving on his own. And Paris fucking ignored it. It took another year. April of 1696, Paris finally announced that he would step down when his contract would expire on July 1st. He was worn out. His wife was dying. His niece, we don't know what the fuck happened. The village he had spent 8 years presiding over had basically turned on him in every direction. And with his wife finally dying on July 14th, 2 weeks after Paris's last day as minister, it only got worse for him because Paris had no other job to go to. He had no other church that would take him, and he was still living in the parsonage, the house that he had. You'll again remember, he'd manipulated the village into deeding to him personally in 1689. The Salem Village Committee sued him to evict him. He countersued back salary and claimed that he was owed. The dispute went to arbitration in 1697. Winthrop and Samuel Sewell and Alicia Cook served as arbitrators. And yeah, again, remember how tiny this world is. It's all the same fucking people constantly coming back together. The arbitrators settled it, and Paris would surrender the deed to the parsonage in exchange for 79 pounds in back pay. He left Salem Village, never to come back. The next decade of Reverend Samuel Paris's life is a slow, kind of picturesque disaster. He took a post in the small frontier. He gets a post in the small frontier village of Stowe, the same village where he'd done a temporary preaching stint back in 1685, and the one that had first convinced him to pursue the ministry again. That's where it all started.
Oh, nice.
He immediately got into a salary dispute with that congregation. I know, very surprising. He remarried to a woman named Dorothy Noyce from Sudbury.
Noyce.
Oh,
Noyce. Oh, you married Noyce? Noyce.
He left Stowe in late 1698 and moved his family to Newton, then to Watertown, then to Concord. He worked briefly as a school teacher. He then worked briefly as a shopkeeper, and then he worked briefly as a farmer, and then none of it worked out. His new wife, Dorothy, had brought a substantial inheritance into the marriage, and Samuel Paris, remember, this dude blew through 7,000 pounds inheritance in the Barbados property and business that he owed.
Nice.
And so what do you think happened when his wife inherited money? Did he learn? No.
No.
Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on.
Rhetorical. I was, yes, do you think he learned his lesson?
Yes.
You know that picture of Bugs Bunny? That one where he's like,
oh yeah. No.
Yeah.
Correct. No, he fucking blew through that money too. He served a short stint in prison for debt. And he may have considered moving back to the Barbados. We don't know. But in 1708, Paris took a job as minister of Dunstable, a remote frontier village that was so dangerous, so poor, and so vulnerable to Wabanaki raids that no other minister in the colony would take it. The previous minister had quit after going 6 months without pay. Paris lasted 3 years. In 1711, he moved to Sudbury, his second wife's hometown, where he lived out the rest of his life as a small-time farmer, briefly teaching school, building up a modest estate to leave to his children. He died in February of 1720 at the age of 67. And his will, written a week before his death, opened with the phrase, quote, "Perceiving the approach of the King of Terrors drawing near." The King of Terrors was a Puritan euphemism for death. He was basically like, oh, I'm about to die. I'm going to die soon. It comes from the book of Job, apparently. 28 years after Samuel Paris had stood in his pulpit and warned his congregation that the devil had been raised among them, that his rage was vehement and terrible, and that no one could know when it would end, he was at long last facing his own King of Terrors, as he had finally outlived the devils that he supposedly found and fucking died as a mediocre nobody. It's a shame he didn't fall into nothingness, and lose all of his, everything, that he had a modest estate that he could leave to his children. But at least he didn't die continuing to be a preacher and preaching hatred to whoever would listen to him.
I guess.
Yeah. I'm trying to salvage a little bit of
sounds like what I want to do. That sounds like if this ended tomorrow and that was what happened in the rest of my life, I would be like,
it all worked out. Fuck. I mean, I guess you're right. Sometimes just
he left a modest estate for his children.
Yeah, he had a small farm with the.
I just want to point out how funny it is that at that time, and only really up until recently, one with no real training could just go to a new town and start over and claim you were a thing.
What are you talking about? I'm James. Yeah, Alex, what the fuck
you
is
could
that?
just
I'm James
do it.
Landing, dude.
Yeah, you go out far enough, you will never see anyone you knew ever again.
Yeah,
I'm James Blastweight.
So in 1699, Thomas Putnam Sr. died. He was 47. 2 weeks later, his wife, Anne Putnam Sr., the troubled mother we had already talked about, also died, both within a fortnight of each other at the time. They left behind 8 children, the eldest of whom was Anne Putnam Jr., who was now 19. So at 19, the girl who basically was at the center of a lot of this stuff, was the head of the household. She had 7 younger siblings that ranged aged from 16 down to 7 months old. She had to raise them. And by every account we could find, she raised them alone. She never married. In 1706, when she was 26, Anne Putnam Jr. applied for full membership in the Salem Village Church. The Salem Village congregation, under its new minister, Joseph Green, who was a 22-year-old Harvard graduate who had taken over after Paris and who had spent his short tenure quietly trying to repair the village's spiritual wounds, still required a full public confession from anyone seeking membership. Most other Puritan congregations had loosened this requirement, but Salem Village had not. Reverend Green worked with Anne Putnam on her confession, and he showed a draft to Samuel Nurse, one of Rebecca Nurse's sons, a man who had 14 years earlier to this watched his own mother die, being hanged because of her testimony as being a witch. Samuel Nurse approved the draft, and then Anne Putnam Jr. stood in front of her congregation while Reverend Green read her statement aloud, and I have the statement here for you. This is what I mean. There's so many sources for this shit, man. It's crazy how many documents we actually have. Jess, you can read this one.
I desire to be humbled before God for that sad and humbling providence that befell my father's family in the year about 92, that I, then being in my childhood, should, by such a providence of God, be made an instrument for the accusing of several persons of a grievous crime, whereby their lives were taken away from them, whom now I have just grounds and good reason to believe they were innocent persons, and that it was a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in that sad time, whereby I justly fear I have been instrumental with others, though ignorantly and unwittingly, to bring upon myself and this land the guilt of innocent blood. Though what was said or done by me against any person, I can truly and uprightly say, before God and man, I did not out of any anger, malice, or ill will to any person, for I had no such thing against one of them, but what I did was ignorantly being deluded by Satan. And particularly, as I was a chief instrument of accusing Goodwife Nurse and her 2 sisters, I desired to lie in the dust and to be humbled for it, in that I was a cause with others of so sad a calamity to them and their families, for which cause I desire to lie in the dust and earnestly beg forgiveness of God and from all those unto whom I have given just cause of sorrow and offense, whose relations were taken away or accused.
I give him 65%.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, Baker in the book, I have a quote from him, specifically says, quote, "The statement is worded so opaquely and inclusively that it is impossible to say, so people will see it in what they want to see." Like, basically, like, it was a YouTube apology. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was a fucking YouTube. It was a non-apology apology. It's whatever you want it to be.
I want to lie in the dark.
This was the supreme version of "I'm sorry if it offended you."
I hear that you were offended. Some people might say it was Satan and not me who's responsible, and that I shouldn't be blamed. But whether it was me or not who actually did these things, I feel really bad that anyone was hurt by anything that happened.
My favorite part of this entire thing is the part where it's like, you know, whatever it is that I did say, I didn't do it because I was mad or I hated someone or I just didn't like that person. I had none of that against them. I was just being stupid. But because Satan made me do it.
Yeah, Satan made me stupid. I'm sorry.
Which is a crazy thing to say, because then that's literally being like, Yes, those witches. Why, I was the witch all along. Agatha, bitch. Like that's crazy.
It's a non-apology. Cotton Mather never apologized, as we learned. He died in 1728. His diaries in the years after, by his account, he said he grew more spiritually anxious after the witch trials. He wrote about the trials privately throughout his life, but he never publicly recanted what he had done at Burroughs' execution or what he had written in his book about defending this shit. Like, he kind of went to the grave also. Unlike Stoughton, I don't think he died believing he was fighting evil. I think he was more worried dying defending his reputation and his actions, where I think the other guy truly did believe he was like a judge fighting evil. This guy was way more self-preservation
This guy was
focused.
a clever little devil. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. And while the apologies were going on, the colony was also slowly, mechanically, legally trying to undo what it had done. In 1697, the same year as Sewell's apology, a few of the surviving accused had started petitioning for compensation. Their argument had been that they were falsely imprisoned, that their property had been seized, their family had been impoverished. Their reputations were destroyed. Many of them were still under the formal legal status of attainder, which was an English legal concept that meant that as a convicted felon, you forfeited your civil rights. Your children could not inherit. Your land was in limbo, like that kind of thing.
And they still were?
Yeah.
Why?
Welcome to the shit, dude. It makes no sense. It's no sense. Petitions like these trickled in for years. Because remember, there's like, how many people confessed just to be let go? There's hundreds of people that were confessed and now needed to be undone in the court. Because like, they didn't do like a giant wide wiping of witchcraft, like things in the court. People had to be acquitted for this shit. So the petitions,
usually when you get acquitted, it means that they like undo the shit that they did to you, right?
You would think. These petitions trickled in for years. Most of them were ignored. In 1703, the General Court took a first pass at it, and they passed an act that reversed the attainder of 3 people: Abigail Faulkner, Sarah Wardwell, and Elizabeth Proctor. 3 out of the 20 executed and several more condemned. Honestly, kind of fucking embarrassing. Like, just do all of them. But no, 3 of them. The families of most of the dead got nothing. The thing that finally moved the colony was a petition campaign organized in 1709 and 1710, led largely by just the families of Salem
always
villages.
The fucking people. It's always got to be the fucking people.
Dude, wait till we get just wait. There's a little part that's just like crazy to me. A substantial sum, like I lost my spot. There we go. So all the families in Salem Village got together. The nurses, the Towns, the Coreys, the Easties, they all went to the General Court collectively. They demanded a complete reversal of attainder for all of the executed. They demanded financial reparations for the families of those who had died and those who had been imprisoned. The General Court appointed a committee to investigate, and the committee took more than a year of investigating the stuff. They received claims totaling £796, which was an enormous amount of money. Think about how £7 was $3,000. You're looking at what?
1,000 to 1,500.
Yeah. 1,000 to 1,500. So we'll say £10 is 2,000, maybe something like that. And so do 10 times 7, like you're looking at 70,000, 10 times 100. You're looking at $700,000 or 10 times 10. Yeah, whatever. A ridiculous amount of money. I can't do math right now. On October 17th, 1711, the Massachusetts General Court passed an act to reverse the attainders of George Burroughs and others for witchcraft. The act formally reversed the convictions of 12 of the executed witches, plus Giles Corey, plus 7 others who had been condemned but not yet executed. 20 now had been restored, but not even all of the executed had been restored yet. Only a chunk of them. On December 17th, 1711, and just also keep in mind, of the first 3 people that were acquitted or like released, Giles Corey, the guy who got pressed to death, was not of the first round. He was second round like acquittals, which is
second round draft pick.
He was a second round acquittal pick, rough. Man. That's rough. On December 17th, 1711, the General Court approved a payment of £578 to be distributed to the families. The reparations were divided according to the committee's recommendations, and the nurse family received 25 pounds for Rebecca. The Burroughs heirs received 50 pounds. The estate of Giles Corey received 21 pounds. Sarah Good's heirs received 30 pounds, and Mary Eastie's family received 20 pounds. They got the chunk of money. They didn't come close to compensating for like the loss of fucking family, but at least they got some money out of it. Philip English, the wealthy Salem merchant who had fled to New York with his wife to avoid execution, had claimed losses of more than 1,500 pounds. He received nothing in this round and would have to keep petitioning for another decade and a half before he received a token settlement that he refused on. That when he did get it offered, he refused on principle.
Yeah.
He refused on principle. The dude had to leave his whole life behind because he was going to die otherwise. And then the 1711 reversal of attainder didn't cover everybody. The committee only reversed the convictions of the people whose families had specifically petitioned for them.
Why?
I know. This is what I mean. We got to keep doing this because it's like, it keeps going. 6 of the executed had no surviving family member willing or able to petition, so their convictions stood. Their attainders stood, their names in the eyes of the law remained names of convicted witches. The 6 were Bridget Bishop, who was first hanged, Susanna Martin, who had hanged with Rebecca Nurse on July 19th, Alice Parker, Ann Pudeator, whatever that name was, Wilmot Red, and Margaret Scott. And then there was a 7th whose case was even weirder because she'd been convicted by the Superior Court of Judicature in January of 1693. She'd been reprieved by Governor Phipps. Her brother had tried to petition for a reversal of her attainder on her behalf, but his petition got lost in the bureaucratic shuffle, I guess. And apparently the court confused her with her mother, who had the same name and had been acquitted. So in 1712, the woman herself petitioned the court directly, and she reminded the court that she had in fact been convicted and that her name had been left off the 1711 reversal. And so the court took her petition and didn't act on it. That was Elizabeth Johnson Jr.
What the fuck?
In 1712, we're getting close to the end here. I know we're like the last back quarter of this now.
Everybody was like, we were wrong. And then everybody just paid for it for the rest of their lives.
Dude, just wait. In 1712, on March 6th, the Salem Town Church formally voted to rescind the excommunications of Rebecca Nurse and Giles Corey, because while they were acquitted, they still remained excommunicated from Catholic Church, even after they were killed. The same excommunications that the minister who had called the 8 hanged in September 22nd.
On what grounds were they excommunicated?
Well, when they get convicted as witches, they get also immediately excommunicated.
Right. And
now,
so
reversing the excommunication is a separate process than the court process of getting them acquitted and seen as innocent. So you do one, and then you have the ability to go and do the other, because you can't get unexcommunicated until you are then first approved to be innocent by the court. Because if the court says you're a witch, then why would the church let you in?
This was like when I needed registration to get insurance and insurance to get registration. And I was like, help. Help.
Well, that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. So the repair work just kind of continued in like fits and starts over not just a decade, but multiple decades. Like we're in 1712 as we're talking right now. In 1750, Salem Village finally petitioned to separate from Salem Town, become its own community. And it took 2 more years and an argument with the royal governor. But in 1752, the village got its incorporation and it chose a new name. This is when the village became known as what it's known as now, Danvers. We don't know what it was named after. Some people think it was named after the English aristocrat, but more importantly, it was the only thing they care about is that it was named anything other than Salem. Anything other than Salem. Because by 1750s, Salem was already so famous for the witch trials that any village trying to put 1692 behind it wanted nothing to do with the name at all. So if you go to Danvers today, you can stand on the foundation of Reverend Paris's parsonage. The house itself burned down in the 1780s. The Rebecca Nurse homestead is a museum now. and the Salem Village meeting house where the first examinations were held is gone. The site of Gallows Hill, where most people for centuries thought the hangings had happened, is a neighborhood of single-family homes now. The actual execution site, Proctor's Ledge, identified by a team of historians that we talked about last episode in 2016, is now a small memorial just below the hill on just like a quiet residential street. The trials happened in a real place, like it's just now known as Danvers. And you would think, looking at like 1711, that the colony had done what it was going to do, that like the legal reckoning was over, that the rest of the story was going to be about how memory kind of works. But no, because like Alex said, how did it take so fucking long? Because there's still people that up to, like, I'm jumping ahead of my own I don't want to jump ahead, but I'm like, it's mind blowing. So the first thing that happened is what happened to most like early American history around this time was that it became a story people wanted to tell. We saw it with Belle Starr and a bunch of other stuff. I always go to Belle Starr because it's like, I don't know, I just go there.
Well, also we're a new country, right? We're looking for like
super new. Yep.
Yeah, we're looking for like a story of our country a little bit, you know?
Yep. So the first major retelling of Salem was Charles Upham's 2-volume Salem Witchcraft, which was published in 1867.
Good title, solid, respectable, nothing too crazy.
No, it's just Salem Witchcraft. You get what you're getting when you go into it. You don't have to think about it.
Good.
Upham was a Salem native and a former Unitarian minister and former U.S. congressman who set out to write a comprehensive account. And it's from Upham that a lot of the cultural mythology about Salem actually solidifies for the first time. The thinly veiled land grab reading of the trials that people, including myself, thought a lot of this was for initially, and the framing of the afflicted girls as conscious, like aware fraudsters of what they're doing, and the elevation of like Nathaniel Saltonstall as the lone honorable judge. Some of Upham's framing has held up, but a lot of it hasn't. The second thing that happened, like a lot of it comes from that, basically, is what I'm saying, from that book.
That's pretty, what year is that? That's pretty early.
1867, so a little over 150 years after the trial.
I'm surprised that people were thinking about it from anybody's point of view without a dick before 1910.
Yeah, well, I think it's 1860. The 1860s makes sense for me, but I'm kind of going to talk about it a little bit as we wrap up. But the other thing that happened much later was Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which premiered on Broadway in January of 1953. This guy was a 37-year-old playwright, and this was like the height of his career. And Jesse, you brought this up last week, and we'll address it right now because you're like, I wonder if people like wrote about this with McCarthyism. He was quite literally writing about McCarthyism with this stuff, with this play.
The Crucible is like a parable of McCarthyism, right?
It is.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Through the McCarthy hearings, he had personally been, because in the McCarthy hearings, he had personally been called to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee, and he had personally watched friends and colleagues be destroyed by accusations they couldn't defend themselves against in any rational forum. And I didn't know that about him. He went to Salem in the early 1950s, did a few days of archival research, so nothing deep, and produced a play that basically just took the names and the characters and fictionalized basically everything for it for dramatic effect. But it captured something about the underlying psychology of this thing that no historian at this point in time had really gotten a hold of.
Sure.
Because in the play, like we talked about, we'll go a little detail, is that John Proctor isn't 60 like he is in real life. He's 35 and he has an affair with a teenage Abigail Williams. Tituba is this voodoo priestess from Barbados. Giles Corey's last words are more weight, which may actually be true. And like arguably, maybe the most accurate part of the entire play. It's just the more weight.
Badass, yeah.
Yeah. None of the historical details matters, though. What matters is that the play is that a community has decided to destroy people by accusing them of an unfalsifiable crime, that the only way to live is to confess and then accuse others.
Right.
And that the only way to keep your soul for these people at the time is to die. And that was also McCarthyism's allegory because he fucking lived it. And it's also accidentally kind of a pretty good description of what actually happened in 1692. The Crucible also did something else, which is that it forced Salem to confront itself again. By the 1950s, Salem was a working industrial city that did not particularly want to be famous for the trials. Miller's play brought the trials back into national consciousness in a way that hadn't happened in a century, and Salem started getting pressure from descendants of the accused, from historians, and from random Americans who'd seen the play to actually exonerate the people who had been executed.
That's so fucking like magic based. That's like some like occultism type shit right there.
Yeah, it is. In 1957, after 12 years of effort, the Massachusetts General Court finally passed a resolution, but it was fucking carefully worded.
1972?
1957.
Oh, okay.
Did I say 72? Like
I just
dumbly?
No, I have a head cold, dude. Don't take this on yourself.
Yeah. In 1957, after 12 years of effort, the Massachusetts General Court finally passed a resolution. It was fucking, like I said, worded very carefully. It pardoned, quote, one Ann Putiter and certain other persons, end quote. That was the language. One Ann Putiter, and certain other persons.
We've established this. Doesn't matter what her name really was.
I know, yeah.
For this show, it's Poot Eater.
She likes dessert. Pudding,
like pudding. Pudeator.
Like a pudding eater.
Yeah, that's how I see it. That's how I see it. Yeah.
That's like Fatso last name. I don't know. Like,
oh, this Pudding Eater.
Yeah, exactly.
The legislature had pardoned the 6 who'd been left off the 1711 reversal: Bridget Bishop, Susanna Martin, Alice Parker, Ann Putiter, Wilmot Red, and Margaret Scott. But they had only named one of them by name. The other 5 were certain other persons. Massachusetts in 1957 formally exonerated 5 people without quite saying who they were. This is going to actually fucking matter later. In 1992, Salem observed the 300th anniversary of the trials. The city built a memorial designed by James Cutler and Maggie Smith on a small plot next to the old Burying Point Cemetery in downtown Salem. The memorial consists of 21 stone benches, one for each of the 20 people executed in 1692. Each bench is cantilevered out of a low stone wall with the victim's name, the method of execution, and the date carved into the side. Visitors leave flowers on the benches. You can walk between them. You can sit on them. But like, you know, it's a tourist attraction at this point.
Sure.
The memorial is on the site of the colonial era cemetery where some of the trial era ministers and magistrates are buried, and the accused are not buried there. They were never given an honor of burial in the proper burial ground. The benches are the only memorials they actually have. In 2001, a historian and Salem resident named Paula Keene noticed something. She'd been looking at the 1957 resolution, and she realized that the, quote, one Ann Putiter and certain other persons language meant that, legally speaking, the 5 unnamed exonerated witches had not actually been exonerated. The resolution didn't have legal effect for unnamed people. The 5 were still, in the formal eyes of Massachusetts law, convicted witches 309 years after they've been hanged.
What? Why did they do it like that?
I don't know. So
at all? Like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
what?
It didn't count. No, they were still by
the
law.
Whole point was to like go back and honor those people and do something that like really didn't need to be done by now.
And they got lazy with it. Yeah. Instead of writing all their names in 1957.
They just didn't have them at hand, or what? They just remembered Poot Eater because it's a weird one?
I know. It's so insane. So she worked with the descendants, with Salem State Senator Michael Ruin, with local historians. A new bill was drafted. It named each of the 5 by name. The Massachusetts legislature passed it on October 31st, 2001, because, of course, Halloween, which
not
they thought
even
would
25 years ago,
dude. Just wait. Like, they thought it was thematic, so they passed it. Then Governor Jane Swift signed the bill into law in Salem. Massachusetts had now 309 years later officially cleared every named convicted witch from the trials, except for one. There's still one. In 2017, a memorial was dedicated at Proctor's Ledge. The historical team led by Baker had identified the actual execution site the year before, which is where we learned it's not Gallows Hill, but in the other spot. Salem and the descendants of the executed dedicated a quiet memorial, another low stone wall listing the names of the 19 hanged at that site. There's no parking there. It's like you walk, or it's like in a neighborhood. You have to go like actively walk.
It's like more about it being there than about visiting it. Yeah.
Yeah. But something happened in 2022, because in 2022, a group of 8th graders finished what the colony had actually started in 1711. Elizabeth Johnson Jr. was 22 years old when she was sentenced to death in January 1693. She was from Andover. Her family had been one of the hardest hit families in the entire Andover Panic. She had at least 28 relatives who were accused at this time. Her father was Reverend Francis Dane, an elderly Andover minister who became one of the trial's most vocal critics from within Andover itself. Her mother, also named Elizabeth Johnson, was accused, tried, and acquitted. Elizabeth Jr. was convicted because she had confessed in language that reads 330 years later, like the words of someone with severe, what they historians think, intellectual disability. She described the devil appearing to her as 2 black cats. She showed the magistrates marks on her knuckles where she said the other witches had sucked her, S-U-C-K-T. She gave a tangled, contradictory account that even her own grandfather later said and reflected that she was, quote, weak and incapitious and fearful. Her grandfather, Reverend Dane, said publicly in 1692 that he did not believe his grandfather was a witch. He believed she was confused and frightened. He believed her confessions was the panicked confabulation of a young woman who didn't have the cognitive resources to defend herself, essentially. Governor Phipps reprieved her alongside the other 7 in 1693. She was eventually released. She returned to Andover and she lived the rest of her life there. She never married, never even had kids or anything like that. She never had anyone to advocate for her either, though. In 1709 and again in 1716, the legal record actually shows her selling small parcels of land she'd inherited from her father, which suggests the colony had quietly stopped treating her as legally dead, at least, even though her attainder never resolved. She lived until 1747, dying at the age of 77 years old in obscurity in a small Andover house. Crazy. Her name had been left off of the 1711 reversal because the court had confused her with her mother. We talked about that a little earlier. This is why it's important, because it had also been left off in 1957 resolution because nobody remembered her. It had been left off the 2001 exoneration because the historians and descendants who had organized that effort had been working from the 1957 list, which hadn't had her name on it.
I was going to say, did they just use the names from the play?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's good enough.
By 2010, Elizabeth Johnson Jr. was the last named convicted witch from the Salem trials whose conviction had never been formally reversed.
That's fucking crazy. In 2022?
She had no descendants to push for her. Her grandfather had
post-COVID.
Only post-COVID, dude. Literally post-COVID. Her grandfather had been the only person in the entire record who had publicly defended her, and he died in 1697.
God damn.
So the way this happened is that in 2020, a civics teacher at North Andover Middle School named Carrie LaPierre was looking for a project for her 8th grade class. So she'd been reading a book about local Andover history, and she came across Elizabeth Johnson Jr.'s case. She brought it to her students. The students were 8th graders. Their 8th grade is like, for our American listeners, 8th grade is 13 to 14 years old. They decided that they were going to, doing this project, they were going to clear Elizabeth Johnson Jr.'s name. They spent the next 2 years on it. They read the trial transcripts. They read the 1692 testimony, in which a young woman with what looks an awful like a developmental disability described the 2 black cats. They learned in the process of all this, not only how just to write a bill, they wrote the bill.
That's awesome.
They drafted petitions. They presented their work to lawmakers. They worked with State Senator Diana DiZoglio to figure out how to actually get the bill onto the floor.
Yeah.
It's the Massachusetts legislator, the bill. And when they finally had their way in, the bill stalled. But the students kept going. their teacher kept advocating. This is like hero teacher. I just want to say right now, like when I was reading it and putting this together, fucking Carrie, you're a hero. You're the teacher that I would have loved to have in high school. It's like you instilled a passion into these kids that like so few teachers are able to do.
Crazy.
It's so fucking badass. I'm so glad that like you exist and teachers like you exist.
That's fucking crazy.
So it stalled, but their teacher, Carrie, was like, just keep going, keep pushing. They were, so they wrote up follow-up letters. They made follow-up presentations. They kept the case in front of the legislature, but when like seemingly the case was not going to go anywhere. Senator DeZoglio eventually found a workaround. She was able to attach the exoneration as an amendment to the 2023 Massachusetts state budget. That's how she got it in. And on May 26th, 2022, finally, 329 years after Elizabeth Johnson Jr. had been sentenced to death, the Massachusetts legislature passed the budget. And on July 28th, 2022, Governor Charlie Baker signed it into law, tucked into a $52.7 billion fiscal 2023 spending package, was an amendment exonerating Elizabeth Johnson Jr. of the crime of witchcraft.
Doing literally nothing.
The eighth graders won. 2 years of them putting this together. It's crazy that should not be like that. That also speaks to our government in the way it
lack
works.
of priority.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like insane. In the press coverage afterwards, and I actually remember the press after this stuff. The students who had worked on the case spent 2 years calling Elizabeth Johnson Jr. by a nickname. They called her EJJ. They had developed these kids kind of like developed their own little personal relationship with this woman that they've been trying to exonerate for 2 years.
Advocating for her. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Carrie LaPierre, the teacher, told reporters that the class talked about EJJ for so long and so consistently that she'd become one of our world. Like they just like they felt like they knew this woman.
They were haunted by a tulpa of EJJ for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, like that's why they fought so much for her, is they personalized it.
Yes, 100%. And that in 2022 to 2023, that is technically where the Salem Witch Trials end, which is nuts. EJJ was the last name on the list, the last conviction reversed, and it was the kids who did it. Now, the last bit that we're going to talk about here as we wrap this episode up is, before we close out, a question I talked about in part 2, because we said this at the beginning of part 1 as well, that the Salem Witch Trials are the largest witch panic in American history, and they are also the last major witch panic in the entire English-speaking world. After Salem, no person is ever again executed for witchcraft in colonial America or in post-colonial America or in England, Scotland. Scotland would, I learned, execute one more witch in 1727, but then never another one after
Wasn't
that.
there some? Oh no, I think it was just a public execution in the 70s or something in England. I can't remember.
Oh, I have no idea. The European continent has scattered cases throughout the early 18th century, but the great age of European witch trials, quote unquote, was, which by the way, killed between 40 and 60,000 people over the previous 2 centuries. After Salem, it's effectively over. And historians spent years on this question. And there are a lot of answers, and basically all of them are true in part, right? Some of it is the law. Salem's evidentiary failures became, for English-speaking jurisprudence, like a sort of permanent cautionary tale, like spectral evidence stuff. The use of spectral evidence, the testimony of afflicted persons about what they had seen, the specter of accused person doing, like all that stuff got formally disqualified by all of this. That was a huge shift. Confession also became less acceptable as the sole basis for conviction, because Salem had demonstrated that confession could be coerced. If only the cops of today would learn that. The asymmetry that the colony had unwittingly produced, which was the 55 who confessed and lived, the 19 who maintained their innocence and died, became a permanent stain on the idea that confession was reliable evidence. Some of it is also religion. The Puritan worldview, which had held the supernatural like malevolence walked among the godly community story, could be detected and prosecuted, was already in retreat in the 1690s. If you remember in part 1, we talked about how like they were already trying to figure out how to get the younger generation to come to the church. The numbers were bleeding out of Puritans. increased Mather's book and the publication of Thomas Brattle's letter and the public apologies of Sewell and the jurors. Altogether, these documents pushed the colony's religious establishment toward a position that had been quietly available kind of for decades. Again, the devil was real, but that his works were largely inscrutable, and that the courts of men were not equipped to identify and punish his accomplices with the certainty of witchcraft prosecutions required.
You know what's so funny about it is that all the times throughout history, in America mostly, this is like what I know and have studied. I don't know much about, sorry, Europe. I got nothing for you. But in America, at least, every time there's been a moral panic or some sort of like demonic this or that, and the churches really hammer home the idea of Satan walks among us, come to the church, we need you. It usually, A, is because there are enough people going to church. B, because during the time there's confusion and people are looking for answers. And C, the outcome is always the same. There's an uptick, a commotion, and then people are like, well, that was the stupidest thing I've ever been a part of.
Let's never do that again. Yeah.
Yeah. And what ends up happening after that is you see that most churches that are more positive and that give something to the community, that give people hope and a reason to attend and community in a positive way, end up thriving and continue to thrive compared to those that are negative.
Yeah.
But much like all things in life, the negative stuff is huge. Like when it happens, it gets big. Like in this case, it got big. But what ends up, the aftermath is always people look for sanity, where they're like,
yep,
I need to find someone who isn't a mess. And so it just it's a cycle, and it keeps happening over and over and over again.
Let's hope.
yeah, knock on wood. Another one of the reasons that the witch trials stopped is like, you gotta keep in mind also the year we're in. Like science is about to kind of pop off. I hear that's a new thing. Yeah, it's a new thing by then. Thomas Brattle, again, is the kind of the figurehead we looked at in the story. He kind of came from the Royal Society, an institution where Robert Boyle was working. But like the next century would be like a century of adopting scientific habits. Like we see the boom of scientific thought process reason. From this point on. Yeah, reason and stuff. Then obviously another big part of it is like, they can't be doing this witchcraft stuff while there's the war still going on. King William's War on the New England frontier, the war like that is talked about constantly throughout all this, and where some of the PTSD may have even started, is still fucking going. And it wouldn't end until 1697 with the Treaty of Ryswick. The end of the war coincides very closely with the end of the trials too, and the beginning of like the public's reckoning for both of those things. All of these explanations are, I think, partly real, and none of them by themselves can fully really explain it alone. I think it's all of it, like the perfect storm of it all. But there's still one more piece as well, because like Salem ended because Salem and like 21 dead people in a small community is a lot. Like a reminder that, or another reason I think this ended is because it immediately started eating away at people's friends, family, community in a way where witch trials in bigger countries with more people wasn't really doing. Here, as we kept pointing out, part after part, we see the same names crisscrossing with each other, talking to each other. It's family feuds. It's always the same names. I think 20 people dead in like a year on a community that is that small is a shock to the community itself, and how quickly it reached the higher class individuals of the colony.
It's weird how not global people were at this time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if something happens in your immediate vicinity, like right now, like in LA, people are like getting murdered in town, probably. Like, I don't know how often, but like around me, violence, like stuff happening. I don't even hear about it. I don't even know about these people. Very different way of living.
So as we wrap up, and this is come to the end of this, where does it kind of like leave us, right? Basically, like all that shit. The trials happen for a myriad of reasons. You've got the Frontier War, New Royal Charter taking out a colony with no functioning government that it can fully understand, with like half privileges and half no privileges. PTSD leaking its way in. The important thing is like, at least they fucking stopped. It's a bit late in they killed 20 people.
There was some awareness, at least. There was some
awakening.
One guy wore an uncomfortable piece of leather, and one guy said that he wanted to lay down in the dust.
Yeah. And though they in their apologies, they say they, it still was Satan's fault, but they apologize for being tricked by Satan. It's still, by the end, it would still take until 2022 for the witch trials to truly, actually, technically by law end.
That's fucking
thanks to a bunch of
nuts.
8th graders. And that is where we're going to leave it. There's still so much out there about the witch trials that, got left on the cutting room floor. If this sparked an interest, go read the book I recommended at the top. There's also so many other books. There is a wealth of just fascinating political and governmental things happening around this time and why this was all going on. And there are so many other just details about each one of these people who were killed had a family and a story. And we know things about them that just didn't have time to get to that. It's fascinating. But goddamn, when I was putting this together, I did not expect to mirror so much of present day, as it did. And that feels like it's a lesson I consistently learn on the show. Whenever I do a topic that feels old, how much of it is still so true to this day.
This one is such a crazy allegory. It
how are you feeling?
Sense.
How are you feeling about the Salem Witch Trials from where you were going in and now where we are after?
Surprised by the context, but walking away from it, I feel the same lesson should be learned from it. Right? We're all still very clear that this was low key the mass hysteria squeak wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really all this boils down to is a bunch of people went absolutely insane from their senses for a while.
Yep.
And did something that was so not right and then couldn't even cop to it for the most part.
Something in their 1690s brain and gut told them what they were doing. There was a portion that was fuck, I fucked up. We fucked up. We have to find a way to apologize by this, but do it in a way where we don't blame ourselves fully and acknowledge Satan is real. It's fascinating.
I will say this about feeling guilt about past decisions, be they political, whatever they are. As long as you change, nobody's waiting for that apology. As long as you change. And in this case, they didn't even change. It had to go all the way to 2022. But as long as you change, it's all good.
How do you feel, Jesse, about it? And you feel similar?
I think it as you mentioned, it reinforces the fact that there are many times people use people's beliefs and things against them or to manipulate them, and it always ends terribly. Always.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the people that do the using don't necessarily feel bad about it or will justify why they did it for some purpose. So yeah, man. I've never been a fan of that.
Yeah,
I don't like when people take something, be it
really? You don't?
No, this is why I think Alex and I were talking about The Amazing Randy. I love that dude and that he just went after con men and people that used, my desire to talk to a dead relative, used it against me to bilk me for all my money. That's disgusting. I hate that kind of stuff. So, I have no problem with faith and believing in anything, right? It could be Bigfoot. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit. But then taking that and then using it to manipulate someone or to if we just suddenly made an episode where we said Bigfoot was real, we have evidence by our Bigfoot pamphlet.
Yeah,
I would take issue. I'd be like, this is some shady shit.
We made a fake Bigfoot pamphlet from the 80s instead.
Yeah. My solemn swear to all of you is if we ever get evidence of anything, it's going out for free everywhere.
Yeah, I'm
going to plaster that shit across the internet until the CIA comes for me.
Wait for an episode, bro. We're probably
you'll be on my Twitter the day I'm confirmed that it's real. That's it for us. Before we head off we're going to head off to patreon.com/Chilluminati pod for a mini-sode. For North London Forever, that's for my boy Dean. Apparently his footy ball team won and he wanted to shout out. He gets
congrats.
Don't forget about tickets
for our live show.
Don't forget about the new shirt with the mantis on it.
Yep.
Don't forget about 5 mystery stickers, possibly featuring Range 4 Harry and more.
Ooh.
And 70% off all those beautiful posters at Yeti/Chilluminati.
Hell yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. We're off to go to the mini-sode. We appreciate it. We love you.
Links in the description.
Anyway, me and my wife were sitting outside indulging one night, enjoying ourselves. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I stepped back inside, and after 5 moments, I hear my wife go, "Holy shit, get out, get out." So I quickly dash back outside. She's looking up at the sky. I look up too, and there's a perfect line of dozen
like traveling across the sky.